At some point, my grandson Brian started having trouble speaking. Is it called aphasia? Even when Brian had something to say, he couldn't get the words out, and his face would twist in pain.
What did you say? If you have something to say, use your words. You're not a dog, you can speak properly.
When Emma, my son Kevin's wife, scolded him with a terrifying expression, Brian stammered even more. Don't push yourself too hard. Here, if you have something to say, write it down. Brian remained silent and began drawing figures in his blank sketchbook. All I could do was sit next to him and quietly watch as he drew. This is Brian, and this is Grandma. Wow, Brian, you're really good at drawing. But soon, Brian started drawing a strange figure for some reason. It was a figure with a completely white face, a bright red nose, and dressed in a red and white striped outfit. Is this a clown? Brian nodded slightly and looked at me with a pleading gaze, as if trying to tell me something. Could it be Brian? Brian is asking us for help. My name is Catherine Brown, and I am 60 years old. When I was younger, I worked as an elementary school teacher. I met my colleague Robert there, and we got married. I quit teaching when I got pregnant. Our son, Kevin, who was born then, has already become independent and started his own family. Now, Robert and I are enjoying a leisurely and carefree retirement together. Our greatest joy is undoubtedly our grandson, Brian. Every summer, Brian comes to visit us with Kevin and his wife, Emma. The time spent with Brian is precious and irreplaceable. Brian is Kevin's child from his previous marriage, and after the divorce, Kevin took custody of him. Kevin soon remarried and had a second child with his second wife, Emma.
Emma is really a great wife. She doesn't waste words on me when I come home tired from work, and above all, she doesn't make unnecessary expenditures. She's efficient in everything. In contrast, my ex-wife was really terrible. She would always say, "Brian, Brian," and consult me about him at every opportunity, and she would buy unnecessary things for Brian.
Kevin often compares his ex-wife with Emma. Kevin has always liked using the word efficient. He was an excellent student and is now successfully climbing the career ladder. However, he believes that anything that isn't beneficial to him, even if it's important to his own child, is unnecessary. He has never bought a present for Christmas or Brian's birthday because he considers it a waste of money. Before Brian started elementary school, the design of the sport uniforms was changed. The parents decided to unify everyone with the new uniforms, but Emma made Brian wear a hand-me-down uniform from a friend, even though Brian didn't like it, making him the only one in an old uniform.
Since we got this hand-me-down, it's good enough for you.
I want to wear the same uniform as everyone else.
Without listening to Brian's plea, Emma stuck to her decision, which Kevin deeply appreciated.
As expected of a good wife, why waste money on something when he'll graduate elementary school soon?
For them, most of the expenses for Brian seemed to be unnecessary. And this summer, Brian came to visit us again with Kevin and Emma. Since Kevin remarried Emma, I've been concerned about Brian and Emma's relationship. When I look at Brian, I can't help but get the impression that he's somehow isolated within his family.
Be quiet, Brian. Turn off the TV.
Even though Brian wasn't making much noise while watching TV in the living room, Emma yelled at him.
Michael, you love singing, don't you?
Yet, when her own son Michael played his favorite music loudly on Kevin's tablet, Emma sang along without any concern for disturbing the neighbors at night. I understand her desire to dote on her biological son Michael more than stepson Brian. Still, I can't help but feel there's an unfair difference in how Emma treats Brian and Michael. I want her to really face Brian. I have urged Kevin many times to get Emma to change her attitude.
Brian is already a big brother. He can take care of himself.
But Kevin, even though Brian is his son, never seemed to care and always just laughed it off.
Brian, wait.
One day, Brian went outside with a bug net and cage, and 2-year-old Michael excitedly tried to follow him. However, Michael stumbled and fell on his bottom. Noticing this, Brian quickly ran back and offered his hand to Michael. Michael didn't cry, but smiled and grabbed Brian's hand to stand up. Brian really is a big brother now.
Let go of his hand. What are you doing to Michael?
I was watching this heartwarming scene, but Emma's shouting shattered the calm and gentle atmosphere in an instant.
Don't make Michael do unnecessary things. What if he gets hurt? Oh my God, his pants are dirty.
Emma glared at Brian while brushing the dirt off Michael's pants. Emma, there's no need to get so angry, I said with a strained smile, trying to calm Emma down. I think it's good for kids to be active outside and get their clothes dirty. It helps their emotional growth, and today is such a nice day. At that moment, Kevin arrived.
This is a family matter. Stay out of it, Mom.
He looked down at me with a cold gaze.
Did you dirty your clothes again, Brian? Washing costs money for water, electricity, and detergent, you know. We'll have to charge you a lot of money later.
You're being dramatic. If you're too strict on Brian at such a young age, it's not fair to him. Look, Brian is already so scared. Brian, now feeling down, was caught between the stern looks of his father Kevin and his stepmother Emma.
I'm sorry.
At some point, Brian had become unable to speak well. Is it called aphasia? Even when Brian had something to say, he couldn't get the words out, and his face would twist in pain.
What did you say? If you have something to say, use your words. You're not a dog, you can speak properly.
When Emma scolded him with a terrifying expression, Brian stammered even more. Don't push yourself too hard. Here, if you have something to say, write it down. I handed Brian a piece of paper and a pencil. With writing, Brian, who couldn't speak well, could still express his feelings. However, as soon as Brian took the pencil and glanced at Emma, he immediately threw the pencil away. Brian used to communicate with me through writing, but lately he had been avoiding even that in front of Kevin and Emma. Brian started having trouble speaking not long after Kevin remarried Emma. I wonder what happened. He was so friendly and always smiling when he was little. I'm really worried.
Mom, you spoiled Brian too much. If he can't speak properly even in elementary school, he won't be useful in society.
Kevin laughed, implying that my pampering was the reason Brian couldn't speak. About that, I have something on my mind. I voiced my long-standing concern about Brian. I think you should take Brian to a specialist hospital for an examination.
Take him to the hospital? Do you have any idea how much that will cost? I'm not spending a single dollar on such a waste.
That's right, Catherine. It doesn't make sense to spend time and money on something when we don't even know if he's sick.
As expected, Kevin and Emma were opposed to my suggestion. Whether it's a waste or not, We won't know until he gets a proper diagnosis. A specialist might find something that can be improved. I tried to persuade them. He might have a developmental disorder. You hear about these things on TV all the time nowadays, don't you?
Even if we did that, it would be pointless.
Kevin refused to take me seriously.
Brian is useless by nature. Taking him to the hospital now won't change anything.
Kevin turned to the silent Brian, ruffling his hair roughly as he spoke.
Hey, Brian, even Michael has started learning words. You should try harder to speak properly like him. Just make sure you don't become a burden to us.
My words failed to reach Kevin and Emma. Emma was completely focused on her biological son, Michael, and acted as if Brian didn't exist. When Brian approached Michael with a smile, Emma shooed him away as if he were a stray dog.
Don't touch him with those dirty hands. Get away.
Emma, I understand that you love Michael, but please be kind to Brian as well. Michael is also Brian's brother, and I'm sure Brian loves him very much.
Don't compare Michael to Brian, who is a failure.
Emma glared at me with a sigh. Calling him a failure? You don't have to say it like that.
If Michael plays with Brian and gets influenced badly, will you take responsibility, Catherine? If Michael's future is ruined, it will be because of Brian and you. Stop interfering with my parenting. And when you talk to Michael, get my permission first.
I smiled wryly at her exaggerated words, but Emma was completely serious.
I'm not joking. I genuinely believe your presence is harmful to Michael's education.
Sadness choked me, and I couldn't say anything more.
If you talk to someone as irresponsible as her, you'll end up like Brian, a useless kid.
Saying this, Emma took Michael and left. Robert, who had been listening all along, came over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder.
Emma must be in a bad mood today. Don't take it seriously. Brian will start talking again soon enough.
He comforted me. The next day, the sky was clear and sunny from the morning. While hanging the laundry in the yard and looking at the cloudless blue sky, I felt like taking Brian and Michael outside. Since it's such nice weather, why don't we take a bug net and a cage and go play outside? When I suggested this to Brian and Michael, who were watching TV in the living room, Emma stopped me with a stern look.
Of course not. What if their clothes get dirty or they fall and get hurt? If you want to take someone, take Brian only.
A walk should be fine. It's such a beautiful day.
Catherine, you haven't forgotten our agreement, have you? When you want to talk to Michael, ask for my permission first. Now, Michael, let's go play in the room with Mommy.
Then Emma took Michael's hand and went to the room. Giving up on Michael, I turned my attention to Brian. Okay, Brian, shall we go for a walk with Grandma? But Brian shook his head slightly. Still, it's such a nice day. Moving your body outside will feel great. Even so, Brian kept shaking his head, refusing my proposal. Then Brian stood up and brought crayons and a sketchbook from the bedroom. So, you want to draw, Brian? Wanting to respect Brian's feelings, I decided to stop trying to take him outside and quietly watched over him. Brian, still silent, began to draw pictures of people in his blank sketchbook. Suddenly sensing someone's presence, I quickly turned around. Oh, you scared me. How long have you been standing there? There stood Kevin and Emma, who was supposed to have gone to the room with Michael earlier. Are you both curious to see what kind of picture Brian is drawing? Without answering my question, both of them wore stern expressions, watching Brian's hand movements intently. What's wrong? You both seem off.
It's nothing. Brian, keep going.
Brian continued to draw us silently while we watched. This is Brian, this is Michael, and this is Grandma? Wow, Brian, you're really good at drawing. Brian, without confirming or denying anything, continued to draw the figures in a cute manner. But then, Brian began to draw a strange figure just behind Kevin and Emma. It was a figure with a completely white face, a bright red nose, and dressed in a red and white striped outfit. Is this a clown? Brian nodded slightly and continued drawing the clown.
Oh my, what a strange drawing.
Drawing weird stuff like that shows Brian has no sense for art.
Having lost interest, Kevin and Emma walked away. As I was about to get up and start preparing lunch, Brian suddenly stopped drawing and tugged on my clothes with a strong grip. If you pull so hard, my clothes will stretch. I joked with a laugh, but Brian's serious gaze told me something was wrong. Is there something you want to tell me? Brian didn't speak, but he pointed to the clown in the drawing with a pleading look in his eyes. What's the matter with this clown? Just then, Robert, who had been out, came home.
What's going on? Is something wrong?
Sensing something amiss, Robert looked at the clown drawing.
Didn't you say something like this before? I'm scared of clowns.
At that moment, memories from the past flashed through my mind. I remembered that I had once watched a TV show about clowns who cunningly lured children away and kidnapped them, and since then, I had been afraid of clowns. We watched that show around this time last year, and Brian was sitting next to me. At that time, I vaguely remembered saying, "Clowns are kind of scary, aren't they?" Could it be Brian? As I looked at Robert with suspicion, he seemed to have reached the same conclusion, his expression becoming serious. Brian is asking us for help.
That's what it seems like, right?
Robert murmured, trying to confirm my thoughts.
Grandpa and Grandma will always protect you, Brian.
Robert grabbed Brian's shoulders and made a firm promise to him.
Now, what do we do next?
We devised a plan to find out what Kevin and Emma were doing to Brian. Oh right, we haven't used that yet. I remembered the dinner coupons for a fancy restaurant that a friend had given me. One of my former students, now a French chef, had given them to me as my birthday present. I quickly called Kevin and Emma and showed them the 2 discount coupons. You haven't had much time to go out since Michael was born, right? Why don't you 2 go have dinner together for a change?
Great. It'll save us some money on dinner.
Kevin accepted the discount coupons without any suspicion.
But I'm worried about the kids.
Emma looked a bit wary. Don't worry, Robert and I will take good care of the kids. You both deserve a break and some delicious food.
But Michael is still only 2, and as his mom, I need to stay close to him.
Emma didn't like the idea of me being close to Michael. Kevin patted Emma on her shoulder.
Let's take advantage of Mom's kindness for once. It's a rare chance to enjoy a fancy French meal for free.
The idea of saving money and getting a free gourmet meal worked perfectly on Kevin with his efficiency-driven mindset.
All right, if you insist.
Despite her wariness, Emma agreed to Kevin's suggestion.
Okay, Mom, we're going to enjoy our date after a long time.
That evening, Kevin and Emma left by car. Once their car disappeared from view, we immediately headed to the bedroom used by Kevin and Emma. Even though they are family, rummaging through someone else's bag felt wrong and made me uneasy. To shake off this feeling, Robert and I looked at Brian's sad, frightened face and nodded to each other. Robert found a notebook in Kevin's bag. Inside, there was a page with a website address scribbled on it. Seeing a sticky note attached to it indicated it was an important note. Robert opened Kevin's laptop and typed in the address.
Hey, look at this.
Robert's expression instantly turned to one of horror. Displayed on the screen was a dark website for organ trafficking and illegal drug sales. Moreover, Kevin had bookmarked the homepage, indicating he had visited it multiple times. When we checked the email history, we found detailed exchanges between Kevin and organ traffickers. The contents were shocking. Kevin was trying to sell Brian to overseas dealers, citing Brian's aphasia and inability to speak properly as reasons.
This is clearly a crime. Brian is his own son. I can't believe it.
Knowing Kevin and Emma's plan, we rushed to the police. By now, Kevin and Emma were probably enjoying a fancy French dinner. When we showed the police the website, the detective's eyes widened.
This is the organization we've been tracking.
We also explained the situation to my former student, the chef, and he agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Police officers surrounded the restaurant where the couple was dining. Kevin, unaware of anything, came out with Emma, laughing and chatting.
Food always tastes better when someone else is paying.
Kevin Brown and Emma Brown, right? We have some questions regarding organ trafficking. Please come with us to the station.
Startled by the sudden appearance of detectives, the couple tensed up.
Organ trafficking? What are you talking about? We have nothing to do with that.
Do you recognize this document? The dealer listed here is part of an illegal organization we've been monitoring. You can't claim you're involved.
When the detective showed the contract, Kevin clicked his tongue in frustration. When Kevin noticed Robert and me hiding behind the polices, he glared at us with a furious expression.
You sold me out to the police, your own son.
Kevin pushed Emma towards the detectives and tried to escape alone. However, no matter which direction he ran, there were detectives waiting for him, and he finally gave up and collapsed to his knees.
I didn't do anything. I don't know anything. That document must have been forged by this woman.
I don't know anything either. You did this on your own.
Both of them denied the charges until the end, but were forcibly put into the police car by the detectives. This was the right thing to do, wasn't it?
Of course. We protected Brian.
Robert desperately comforted me as I felt guilty about turning in my own son to the police. The next day, we went to the police station to talk to Kevin, but even family members weren't allowed to see him. Instead, a public defender reported Kevin's responses to us, and Kevin showed no remorse. Instead, he cursed us for reporting him to the police, calling us heartless.
He's beyond help.
Hearing this, Robert exclaimed in anger.
Please tell Kevin next time you see him that it's you who have no heart.
That statement felt like a declaration of estrangement from Kevin. We had one more thing we needed to do. We had to get a proper diagnosis for Brian's aphasia. No matter how many times I had asked before, Kevin and Emma never listened, but we couldn't leave Brian as he was. I took Brian to a general hospital with a pediatric psychiatric department. As a result, Brian's aphasia was diagnosed as being caused by accumulated emotional distress.
Well,
During his examination with the psychiatrist, Brian began to speak slowly but surely. According to Brian, the harassment from Emma started shortly after she became pregnant with Michael. After giving birth to Michael, Emma treated Brian like a nuisance at every opportunity. At first, no matter what Brian said, Emma would just ignore him. But as Michael grew older and Brian tried to play with him, Emma would yell at him loudly. Once or twice, Brian could endure, but when it happened every day, he started to fear Emma. The only person who could have been his savior, Kevin, noticed Brian's increasing isolation, but neither embraced nor accepted him, instead joining Emma in pushing Brian away.
You can't do anything. You're useless in this house.
Brian, who was constantly being insulted by Kevin every day. Among the evidence seized from their home, the police found a handwritten diary by Kevin. According to it, Kevin not only ignored Brian, who couldn't speak or write, but he also thought that selling Brian for organ trafficking would help their household finances. When the detective told me this, I was so shocked that I couldn't eat or sleep that night. It was Emma who first suggested the idea of organ trafficking.
If Emma hadn't brought it up, I wouldn't have thought about selling Brian. I was just used by her.
Kevin told his lawyer that story. To those two, what was Brian's existence to them? Perhaps both the cost of education and counseling seemed like a waste to Kevin and Emma.
What a disgrace. They only care about their own gain, not their child's future. I'm ashamed to be Kevin's father. No matter the circumstances, harming your own child is unforgivable. Please make sure Kevin understands that.
The lawyer, who also had a daughter, sympathetically agreed to convey Robert's message. Did we raise him in the wrong way? With each new revelation from the police and lawyer, I felt the helplessness of being his mother.
There's no use in regretting now. We must focus all our efforts on ensuring Brian and Michael can live happily from now on.
You're right. At that moment, I couldn't think of anything else to say. Later, Kevin and Emma were arrested for violating laws related to organ transplantation, and the broker and the entire organization were also caught. We don't know what sentences Kevin and Emma will receive. Still, even if they were to be released early, it would be difficult for them to return to a normal life. They will never see Brian and Michael again, and even if they wanted to, neither Robert nor I would ever let that happen. We vowed to raise Brian and Michael ourselves. The incident involving Kevin and Emma was widely reported on news, so the local residents knew about our situation. Despite this, no one spoke ill of us. Instead, they were very kind to Brian and Michael.
Please give these to the kids.
One day, an elderly couple next door brought us vegetables from their garden with a smile. Sometimes, they even invited the children to help harvest the vegetables. Thanks to this, Brian slowly overcame his trauma, and his aphasia gradually improved.
Hey, Michael. Today, I'll catch a big bug for you.
Wait for me, Brian. I'm coming too.
During summer vacation, the two often went to play in the back hills. Michael, unaffected by Emma's biased parenting, grew into a kind boy, which reassured Robert and me. The regret of not raising Kevin to be a decent person continued to smolder in my heart. However, seeing Brian and Michael grow day by day gave us hope to live. 10 years have passed since then, and Brian is now in high school.
Human trafficking is still happening all around the world today, and many children are falling victim to greedy adults. And this isn't just a distant problem. It's happening right here in America, right in our own communities. I was lucky to be saved by my grandparents. Now, I want to extend a helping hand to other children. Please, let's not turn a blind eye to this sad reality. Let's fight together.
On weekends, Brian engages in volunteer work, researching and writing articles about human trafficking, which he once experienced himself, and giving lectures to raise awareness.
I had a valuable experience. I want to use that experience to save innocent children. I believe that's my mission.
Brian told me with a determined look in his eyes. Brian aspires to be a journalist and engages in heated debates with Robert about the news and current events every day.
You can't save the world like that. Grandpa, you need to broaden your perspective.
Oh, yes. You're right, Brian.
Lately, Brian is more knowledgeable about social issues and more articulate, leaving Robert often overwhelmed. Meanwhile, I started a children's cafeteria with the help of community members. Watching Brian fight to protect the future of children inspired me to do something for them too. Besides providing meals to children with nowhere to go after school, I also teach them sometimes, using my experience as a teacher.
Thank you, Catherine. See you again.
As I watched the children leave with big smiles, I wished in my heart, may these children's smiles last forever.